Joe Biden walking around Ukraine, Joe Biden, the first American president to land in Israel after a terrorist attack there of October 7th, the Joe Biden of the State of the Union address this year. When the moment sort of is on the line, there's not an example in recent history where he has not delivered. And yet what Kim is talking about is real. There are Democrats that are angsty. I think we have to have this debate about platforming Trump. I was a hawk on this. I was the first person to stop airing Sarah Huckabee Sanders' press conferences because I'd worked in that building, I'd worked in that room, I had reverence for the podium, and I refused to air her lying from it. I believe, though, now as a candidate whose verbal decline is so evident, who walks around muttering the Mocha test to like people that don't even ask him to, it is essential that people see him. He has declined in his public performances to the degree that people just need to see it for themselves. I can't diagnose him. I can't explain it. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he's stressed. But people have to see him before they vote in November.
I think so. I mean, first of all, my head hurts already. Right? And I think all of our heads hurt already. We're going to start our summer with this, and we're going to end our summer with this. And it's going to be the car crash that nobody wants to see, but everybody's going to watch. But also, it is a slugfest. And we're going to see them step into the ring, and we're going to see their fitness. And I think that's what really is going to be on display here. Everybody's concerned about their age. There are lots of Americans who don't like either one of them. And they're going to stand on a stage for an hour and a half or 2 hours, as you know, which is exhausting physically, demanding emotionally, and unpredictable. So we're going to see how they stand up to that. And it's a commander-in-chief test. We had a commander-in-chief forum here at NBC back in 2016 where we sized up, are they ready for that job? And we're going to see that. But I think Biden did something smart. If you're going to do it, which we could debate, you want to control the tempo. There's an old saying in the military, don't let the enemy control the tempo. Biden hit first. He set the terms so there's no audience. He can cut his mic, I think is going to be part of this. And it's on CNN, which is pretty friendly compared to being on Fox or somewhere else. So I think Biden is going to try to press the tempo. He's trying to grab the mic before Trump does and try to drive this narrative through the summer starting on June 27th.
About democracy. We talk about it every time on this show about how at a policy level, it really is this divergent path between something moving more toward autocracy, the Republican Party, in terms of its numbers, the largest enablers of autocracy in the world. When it's in the abstract, though, voters are, mad about the price of things and they're worried about things that feel more tangible. However, the exception to that is when it's tied to what Kim's talking about. When people like Josh Shapiro, who successfully ran for governor in Pennsylvania, gave his closing speech, it was about, in a democracy, you do not take rights away. You do not shrink the enterprise or the experiment. Governor Whitmer also successfully tied democracy to abortion and reproductive health care. What is your sense of the success that's been had and the imperative to tie it to things that are real and urgent to people in November?
I think it's hard. And I think sometimes the political strategists and the parties overthink it. And I think ultimately when I think about this debate, I think about the fact that the world is watching. And our kids are watching. June 27th is the last day of school here in New York City. And I'm trying to think, can my kids watch this? Or is it going to be so disgusting that I encourage them not to watch this part of our democracy? And I think ultimately, who's watching are the people they're trying to convince. The goal is to win the election. I think Mark touched on something that's very important, which is that both candidates have some serious weaknesses right now. Trump keeps seeing it with these holdouts on Nikki Haley voters. Biden's seeing it with the progressive wing and Jill Stein and Cornel West. And they're both seeing it with RFK Jr. And then they're both seeing it with people who are just staying home. So ultimately, they're battling over what might be less than 10% of the overall electorate. And a lot of people who don't like either one of them. And those are the people they have to try to convince. And that's where this debate is really centered. It's centered on trying to move what might be a couple thousand people in a couple of key swing states who are still undecided. And that's where I think the debate is really going to focus. And it's going to come down to who do you trust to be the representative for America to the world? And that's where I think Biden has a real chance to score some points.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, look, I think the history of relentlessly negative Republican campaigns is littered with things that are unseemly and ugly about our politics. And I'm thinking of Lee Atwater and others and things that intersect with my life in politics. But Donald Trump is a relentlessly negative person. And telling the story of Donald Trump requires real steel in the spine to tell the relentlessly negative story of what he plans to do with our country, what he plans to do to our Justice Department, of what he's put on paper and plans to do to his political enemies, about ending democracy, about disregarding the Constitution, about being, quote, a dictator on day one.